As the film opens, we meet Doc Alexander, a former Special Forces operations agent. In a gripping scene, he bears witness to the sentencing of Juan Miguel Prado, a notorious member of the Prado family, the largest cartel in Mexico. Prado has been found guilty of murdering several innocent civilians in America and is about to be executed. The execution has been kept secret to avoid provoking the powerful Prado family. As Prado is about to meet his fate, he is given the opportunity to speak his last words, and what he says shocks everyone. He declares that the killings were only the beginning and that the victims he had killed screamed like pigs. This ominous statement sends shivers down the spine of everyone present, including Doc, who begins to realize that there may be more to this story than meets the eye. The following day, Doc met up with his partner, Billy Riggs, to discuss the dangerous mission they had been assigned. Their task was to negotiate with the infamous Prado cartel to prevent them from continuing their illegal activities in America. The surprising thing was that the mission was ordered by none other than the governor himself. As they discussed their plan, Doc was distracted by a news report on TV. It was about the execution of Juan Miguel Prado, the same man they were supposed to negotiate with. The report mentioned a strange traffic jam that occurred during the execution, which should have been kept secret. The report was followed by an interview with Governor Richard Jeffs, who promised to take strong action against the cartel if they dared to enter America. Hearing this, Doc became worried. He knew that the Prado cartel had previously agreed to stop their illegal activities in America, but the governor's aggressive remarks could unravel the delicate deal that had been negotiated. Doc knew that if the deal fell apart, it could lead to a dangerous and deadly showdown between the governor and the cartel. He and Billy Riggs were determined to complete their mission and prevent such a catastrophic outcome. Later on, Billy Riggs informs Doc that the governor is currently embroiled in a corruption scandal and he's using the cartels as a scapegoat to deflect attention from his problems. In the afternoon, Doc is seen picking up his daughter, Nell, from school, whom he sends back to his mother's house. They have a meal together and Doc asks about the situation at home. It turns out that Doc has been divorced from his wife and his daughter now lives with his ex-wife. Meanwhile, in Mexico, we are introduced to the Prado family, who are outraged by the governor's interview, especially since he openly executed their brother, Juan. We meet Juan's older brother, Lalo, and his youngest brother, Cuco. Cuco is furious and feels that his family's pride has been severely wounded. He intends to seek revenge on the governor for his corrupt actions by traveling to America. Later that evening, Doc meets with Billy Riggs again, and they both look worried. They know that if the governor doesn't apologize to the Prado family, the cartels will retaliate with ruthless violence. They also know that their own families could be targeted by the Prado cartel. The stakes are high, and time is running out. Later on, Billy Riggs attempts to meet with the governor, but she is unsuccessful. So, Doc meets with the governor's assistant to request a meeting, but the assistant informs him that the governor is busy and cannot meet with him for at least a week. However, Doc refuses to take no for an answer and insists that the governor see him immediately. After some persistence, Doc and Billy Riggs finally meet with the governor. Billy Riggs urges the governor to apologize to the Prado family and to stop inciting violence against the cartels. However, the governor is hesitant to do so, as he is running for re-election and wants to appear tough on crime. Billy Riggs warns the governor that if he continues on this path, their families will be at risk, including Billy Riggs's and Doc's own families. Billy Riggs revealed to Doc that the governor had received support from the Prado family in the previous election, leading to Doc's concern that the governor's stance against the cartel would jeopardize their families. Despite Billy Riggs's advice to apologize and stop provoking the cartels, the governor was hesitant to do so as it could affect his political image. Days later, when Doc visited Billy Riggs's house, he discovered that she and her sister had been murdered. Desperate for answers, Doc tried to contact the governor's assistant to inquire about the governor's decision, but the assistant informed him that the governor wanted nothing to do with him and would continue his mission to challenge the cartel. The governor believed that diverting attention from his corruption scandal by targeting the cartels would boost his chances of winning the upcoming election. Despite Doc's request to speak with the governor, the assistant abruptly ended the call. Doc, driven by a sense of desperation, headed to the Prado cartel's headquarters in America in an attempt to de-escalate the conflict. Meanwhile, Cuco, the youngest member of the Prado family, had already arrived in America seeking revenge for his brother's execution. To gain the cartel's trust, Doc lied and claimed that he had been sent by the governor to offer an apology and a proposition for the cartel to leave America. However, the cartel demanded a direct apology from the governor himself and rejected Doc's offer. As Doc was leaving the headquarters, the governor's men suddenly launched a raid, sparking a fierce shootout between them and the cartel members. In a fit of rage and betrayal, Doc joined the fight and began killing the governor's men. Later that evening, the governor's assistant was seen discussing the situation with his boss. In this part of the story, we learn about the governor's plan to strike a deal with the cartels, where they would leave the city safely and in return, they would control the circulation in the area. However, with the governor caught in a corruption scandal, he chooses to take a stand against the cartels to gain public sympathy. and control the situation. Later, the governor's assistant is ambushed by Kyuko, who demands to know what the governor is planning. The assistant denies any knowledge, but Kyuko threatens to kill him. The next day, Doc receives a call from Kyuko, who believes that Doc and the governor are playing games with the cartel members. Doc couldn't believe that he was in this situation. He had thought he had cut all ties with the governor, but now his past had come back to haunt him. Kyuko had made it clear that Doc's daughter, Nell, would live as long as he delivered the governor's head. Doc was trapped. He couldn't risk Nell's life, but he couldn't bring himself to commit murder either. He needed to figure out a way out of this mess. He decided to turn to an old acquaintance, Carl Roach. Carl was one of the governor's partners and a former member of the cartel. Doc knew that Carl had information that could help him find a way to save his daughter. But Carl wasn't willing to help at first. He had no reason to trust Doc and didn't want to get involved. Doc had to resort to threats of breaking in before Carl finally relented and let him in. Doc trying to gather as much information as possible about the man who had kidnapped his daughter. He asked Carl about Kyuko's background, wanting to know who he was dealing with. Carl revealed that Kyuko was the youngest brother of the infamous Prado family, a man so feared that even in Mexico he was known as the Boogeyman. Doc couldn't believe that he had gotten involved with someone like Kyuko and knew that he needed to act fast to save his daughter. But then Carl asked Doc what the cartel had demanded in exchange for his daughter's release. Doc hesitated before revealing the truth. They wanted the governor's head. As soon as the words left his mouth, he knew he had made a mistake. He saw the anger flash in Carl's eyes and knew that he had to act fast. Without a second thought, he lunged at Carl, killing him before he had a chance to alert the governor. Doc knew that he had just made a difficult situation even worse, but he couldn't let the governor know what was going on. He had to find a way to get Nell back and get out of this mess alive. As the night fell, Kyuko had made arrangements to meet with a man disguised as a woman at a seedy motel. Kyuko had a reputation as a lover of men, and this was a disguise that would help him avoid detection. The man nervously asked for permission to use the restroom, but Kyuko forbade him. Soon enough, they were making out. Meanwhile, Doc had made his way to the governor's residence. One by one, he took out the guards, including the governor's mistress. He was determined to get to the governor and put an end to this once and for all. When he finally faced the governor, the man tried to explain his actions, but Doc wasn't interested. All he cared about was his daughter's safety. Without a second thought, Doc killed the governor and went in search of a chainsaw. He knew what he had to do to get what Kyuko wanted, the governor's head. It was a gruesome task, but he was willing to do whatever it took to save his daughter. Doc had brought what Kyuko wanted, the governor's head. He contacted Kyuko, who agreed to meet him at a motel near the US-Mexico border the following day at 8 a.m. As he waited for the meeting, Doc decided to take a break at a bar. He was carrying a bag containing the gruesome trophy that Kyuko had demanded. Back at the motel, Kyuko had returned to the room, angry with the man he had hired for daring to open the door to the toilet. Without hesitation, Kyuko killed him. It turned out that Doc's daughter was in the bathroom, having been held captive there the entire time. Kyuko took the dead man's body outside to dump it in a nearby trash can, and managed to convince some suspicious motel guests that the man had been too drunk to make it back to his room. As Doc sat at the bar, his ex-wife contacted him, desperate for news about their missing daughter. Doc assured her that he was doing everything he could to bring her home safely. The time for his meeting with Kyuko was fast approaching, and Doc knew that he had to be ready for anything. Kyuko was now in a motel room, feeding Doc's daughter. She asked Kyuko why he had killed the man earlier, to which Kyuko replied that the man had disobeyed his orders. Furious, she asked Kyuko when he started killing people. Kyuko explained that he had been brutal since childhood, and his father, a cartel leader, was proud of him. However, Kyuko's father died when Kyuko was only 12 years old. Suddenly, Kyuko heard a noise from outside and went to check it out. A motel guest who had seen him carrying the dead man's body had complained to the receptionist. Kyuko felt unsafe and knew that he had to get himself and Doc's daughter out of there as soon as possible. He gathered their belongings and left the motel. As Kyuko ordered Doc's daughter to hide in the trunk, he was ambushed by a group of people, but Kyuko fought back and killed them all, including the receptionist who had called the police. The next day, Doc arrived at the location where Kyuko had instructed him to come, only to find the place swarming with police. Doc inquired about any child's body found, but he was told that all the victims were adults. Convinced that Kyuko had taken his daughter to the Prado family's house in Mexico, Doc crossed the border and headed towards the family's residence. As expected, Kyuko had taken Doc's daughter to his family's house. Kyuko's family welcomed him and his daughter with open arms. However, as Kyuko tried to settle in, he was constantly haunted by his past and his father's influence on him. Meanwhile, Doc was closing in on Kyuko's location, determined to save his daughter and end the cycle of violence once and for all. Kyuko's older brother, Lalo Miguel Prado, scolded him for the reckless act, warning him of the consequences that would follow. As expected, Doc arrived at the Prado family residence with a bag containing the governor's head, complying with Kyuko's demand. Doc demanded the safe return of his daughter, as he had to leave for America soon. Tuco, however, invited Doc and his daughter to go out, intending to finish them off to avoid future problems. Doc, realizing the danger he was in, decided to take action and fight back. A fierce battle broke out between Doc and the members of the Prado cartel, who were determined to protect their own. With sheer strength and skill, Doc fought against the cartel members to ensure the safety of his daughter and himself. In the end, Doc emerged victorious, but not without leaving a lasting impression on the Prado family. As the intense battle raged on, Doc instructed his daughter to hide in the toilet while he went back to fight the remaining members of the Prado cartel. He left a gun with her for protection, in case things took a turn for the worse. In a pivotal moment, Doc found himself cornered by Lalo and was about to meet his demise. In an unexpected turn of events, his daughter emerged and took down Lalo with a gunshot, saving her father's life. With the danger now behind them, Doc and his daughter made their way back home, relieved and exhausted from the traumatic experience. As they walked, Doc suddenly stopped and instructed his daughter to wait as he opened his bag. To their surprise, he pulled out the governor's head and tossed it into the river, symbolizing the end of their journey and the end of the cartel's grip on their lives. The two of them continued walking, free at last. And with that, the story came to a close. The moral of the story is that it's important to appreciate what we have in life and not always be looking for more. Sometimes, the things we already have are more valuable than we realize.